at how we might create some of this stuff, okay? Again, my database is hidden. I can't see it. How do I get at it? There's a magic button. It's called the F11 key. Because I've hidden my database in this database's settings, I have to hit F11 to bring it up. Nowhere is that appear on the screen or something. It's something I need to know. What we have is going back to those building blocks, right? We have tables, we have queries, we have forms, and we have reports. Those are those 4 building blocks I mentioned earlier. All 4 are present here, okay? When we talk about tables, inside of Passport, right, we are looking at our various tables. I'm looking at the SQL tables. This is our customer file, and you'll see the little globe with the arrow. That indicates that this is a linked table. In fact, if you can make that out, you see the box that opens up below my cursor there? It tells me, look, this is the data source I'm looking at. Here's the basic settings of that data source. Now I'm going to double-click on that little thing, and it's going to open up, and it'll show you all of the fields that are available inside of my table. So as I scoot over to the right here, I can keep on scooting and scooting and scooting, because there are a ton of fields in that customer file. Tons and tons and tons of them. Some of which I probably don't even see inside of like the customer maintenance. They're actually stuff that's stored underneath for reporting and whatnot. So the thing here is I don't need all of those fields to create a report, right? I have specific information I might want to go after. Now, because you see this little globe here, and this would be what we call a linked table, that means that I'm looking at my data in real time. In Access, I may opt to create what's called an import table, in which case it literally takes a copy of the information that's in my database and builds a table here inside of Access for it. It's rare I do that. The last time I did was for a sales manager who spent half of her life on the road. She would come in on Monday morning. She would refresh her database, and Monday after lunch, generally she was hitting the road and she was gone for the rest of the week. So she would refresh her data tables from her current passport information, and then off she would go, and she would have information available to her in neat little reports that we wrote in Access that gave her the information she needed while she was in the field. Now, the oldest it would ever be is a week old. She knew that, so, until the next time she refreshed, she was working with data as of the prior Monday. So how do we get there? Well, to start to organize the information and draw together the information I might want to create, say, this customer sales report, we're going to start with this, but we need more because we refer in here only to a sales rep. And by sales rep, it's looking, I don't know how far out it is, it's looking actually at the sales rep's ID, okay? It's not looking at the sales rep's name. Why not? Well, because that's stored elsewhere. We don't have to look at the sales rep's name. So how can we marry those up? Well, we're going to start that by clicking here on the Create tab on the wonderful ribbon that took a little getting used to. And we're going to use our querying tool. Note that we have tables, queries, forms, reports, and then you can get into fun, crazy stuff. This is where you actually have to know a little bit about programming. In this case, we're going to start by designing a query. So when I click this, I rarely use the wizard for designing queries. I almost always use the wizard for designing reports. We'll just get that out there. You'll hear me reiterate that in that training piece. I'm going to use that customer file, so I'm going to take it and we're going to click on it and then click Add. I could also double-click on it. We can also say, look, we want to include the salesman's file here, so I'm going to add that too. Now, there's a link in there because I've already done this once inside of this database, so it assumes that I want to retain that link here. What it's done is it's automatically linked my sales rep to my sales rep. You see this little line in between indicates that they're linked. What that allows me to do, because I have a common field between the two tables, is to say, look, I want my customer's number, I want my customer's name, and I want my sales rep's name. Knowing nothing else, I can click Run, and now we have basic information, but only the fields we've requested, and it's taking fields from two independent files, or two independent tables, if you will, and it's drawing them into almost a spreadsheet-style view, if you will. That is the most basic of basic queries. Actually, the most basic would be if we didn't have any linked tables in here. But let's take it a step further, right? Because what did we do in that other report? We included some sales figures. So over here, you see, these are reasonably easy to read if you know anything about if you're familiar at all with the data that you work with on a day in and day out basis, most of this will make sense to you. If not, there is a data dictionary which helps define what each of these are. And I'll tell you, I'll come back to this, but half the battle is knowing your data. The hardest part about designing one of these things is knowing where to look for the information that you want. And the data dictionary will help with that, but it's going to be your general knowledge of your application that's going to help even more. So as I look, here's my sales next period, current period, year to date. So I want current period, then I want year to date, and then I want last year. So we've asked for some basic fields. Again, run it. Here she is. If I wanted, and I didn't in that report we were looking at, we could go further with this and say, look, I only want to see customers with sales, say the current period, or maybe even we'll go year to date. Sales year to date, less than a certain figure. Actually, I think I had that the wrong way. Less than, say $10,000. We'll say $5,000. I'm going to put in just the number 5,000. So here's the less than symbol followed by the number 5,000. Real simple. I click run. It starts to cut down what we're looking at, and you'll note that the sales, which one did I hit? Let's just check and make sure. Sales year to date. When I execute this, anybody who has a number that matches the number I expect is on this report. So this is where we can start to limit the information we're looking at. Now, what I could do, too, is I could make that a dynamic number by opening this up and saying, look, I want to find sales, and I'm opening up a bracket, less than I'm going to enter in the term, enter minimum sales, so that now when I execute my query, it's going to come up and it's going to ask me, because it doesn't know what to do with that. The bracket normally indicates to access, the open and close bracket indicates it's looking for a field name like sales current period, sales last year. But because this doesn't match a field name, it's not quite sure what to do with it. So what it does instead is it prompts me for it. This is how we can build a dynamic prompt inside of our query. Now, I'm going to kill that because I really don't need that for what I'm trying to do here. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to save our query. We're going to call this query, let's say intro test. We'll click OK. So now this has been saved. We can reopen that at any point. If I come scooting down here, you'll see there's my intro test. It is now in my queries. Now I want to build a report based on this. I'm going to leave the query open. We're going to go back to our Create button, and we're going to tell it we want to use the report wizard. It automatically assumes that we want to use that query. I could change it. I could drop this down and use something else. But I actually want to build a report using that same. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead, and I'm just going to add all the fields. Now, I don't have to. I could add them one at a time, say, oh, I want that one, I want this one, I want this one. That allows me to build a query once that may be good for 2 or 3 other reports. In this case, though, what I really want, I want everything. So I built this query specifically for this report. So when I click Next, it brings me to this ability to add some grouping. Now, we saw some grouping in there. We grouped on sales rep, right? So I'm going to say, look, I want to group on sales rep. Well, I can also group underneath that if I wanted to. I'm going to keep it simple there. You'll find Explore a little bit. You have some grouping options that you can mess around with. If you're dealing with dates, this is where you can change it from, day to month to week to year, and you can group your stuff several different ways if you're using dates. We're going to click Next. And now it asks how we want to sort. Now, we sorted by customer name underneath of our sales rep. Now, how did I get those summaries? Well, I clicked on Summary Options and said, look, I want to summarize. Now, you could also average, min, max, whatever you want to do. I can summarize current period sales, year-to-date sales, last year's sales. I can choose to do summary only. I can do detail and summary. We did detail and summary, and that's what we'll do. We could also choose to do a calculated percentage totals and so on. Again, experiment a little bit as you're playing with these things. We click Next, ask what style report. I'll just take our defaults here. It's going to make assumptions. I'll go Next one more time. I can change the name of this if I'd like. I won't. And the options we're given here is to preview or modify the report's design. We're going to preview it. So we'll click Finish. Off she goes, and now we got a report that's starting to look something like the one that we were looking at a little while ago. But we'll notice, we'll go back over here and we'll open that one up. This one's a little cleaner, right? I got a bold here, so it kind of sets them off. My names are a little better. I don't see all of the, here, I'll show you, all of this stuff, right, where it's telling me how it's doing the summarizations and whatnot. I don't see all that in my other report. Well, where did it all go? Well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to close the print preview, which brings us back to our editor. So instead of having to go through the hassle of trying to create all this, we let the wizard get us to here. Now we just want to play around with it. So we're going to start by changing some names, right? We'll start with the title. I'm going to left-click on it. We'll call it that. We're going to make this a little bit more intelligent, right? We're going to call this Rep. Customer. These are just our labels up on the top of the report. Our customer number. We'll call this one PDD Sales. Year-to-date sales. Sales last year. So we've got some intelligent naming now, right? Stuff that makes a little bit more sense, but I kind of want to expand my customer name a little bit, make sure I'm able to get the whole thing on the report. And then I'm going to use my arrow here to bump it over some so that it opens up a little bit more space for me, because I want to open up this customer number a little bit to make sure that we're getting the entire customer's number. I won't bump over its label just to better align with it now. And these, I know, the way they justify it looks funny, so I'm going to change these just a little bit so they match up with their justification in the report itself a little better. So we're moving things around. We're going to go ahead and back and view, and now there's our new title, right? There's our rep, customer, customer number, and so on. We still got some work to do, though, because I also want these things to show up as dollars. And I don't want this here. I want it to go away. I want to make this bold so it stands out. So we still got a little bit of work to do here. So we'll go back to our intro test here. We're going to go up here. We're going to drop down this button, and we're going to select Design View again, which puts us back into our Design View. So now let's deal with currency, right? We want to make these look like currency. So we're going to close this. We're going to right-click on our Sales Current Period field and go down to Properties. Now what we're going to do is make sure we're on our Format tab, and we're going to assign a format to it. So we'll drop down this box and select Currency. Same concept here, Currency. And you'll note that it keeps the property sheet open for us. So all I got to do is change fields now. We'll drop this down. We'll select Currency. Same thing here on our Summary. We want to make that Currency. And then on our Totals or Grand Totals, same concept. We're going to make that currency. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to click on this, because this is that little ugly thing I don't want there. I'm going to click on it. We need it there because it's the computation and so on. But what we're going to do is we're going to come into, still in our Format tab, we're going to drop down Visible, and we're going to say no. I don't care to see it. We'll leave it there. I don't want to see it, though. Lastly, we're going to select our sales rep's name, Format tab. We're going to make it bold. If we want, we can even underline it. Standard text stuff here. Now we'll go back to our Design tab one more time, and we're going to drop this down and click on Report View. So it's going to bring it up the way we're going to see it. So now what we have essentially is the report we were shooting for.